Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Better Than a Pill. Today, I'm so excited to have special guest Lora Marie with us. And Lora Marie is going to be sharing a bit about her personal journey with autoimmune disease, as well as the things that she's found helpful along the way. Lora has a public site on social media platforms. She has several actually on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, where she shares about her journey, but not just share. She adds fun, joy, and humor. And I think we really all need this. And because I personally have at least two known autoimmune diseases, I began to follow Lora several months ago. And I really enjoy all her posts, and I feel she is an inspiration to others. So welcome, Lora, and thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to share a little bit about my journey.
Awesome. So let's get started. Let's delve into this. Let's start by sharing a little bit about your journey, where it began, when you were first diagnosed, what type do you have, and anything else in between.
So I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis on July 16th of 2018. The beginning was definitely very rocky, as I'm sure most people can relate to. The beginning is probably the worst. My knee was swollen to the size of a cantaloupe. I had some depression sprinkled in there. And there was a lot of tears. Thank God for my friends. My goodness. They were definitely my rock during that time. And slowly but surely, I kind of started gathering different things and adding different things to my toolbox I worked with a rheumatologist and also a naturopath. And just kind of started, like I said, building my toolbox up. And now, 5 years later, I'm in a much different place. And I'm so grateful that I'm not in remission. I will say that. And I still definitely have some painful days, but where I'm at now is so much better than what it was in the beginning. So that's kind of a little gist of it. And we'll get into maybe a little bit more of the details of my journey as we continue on. But that's the gist of it.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And, how has your diagnosis influenced your daily life and routines? And what were some of the initial challenges you faced as well?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the initial challenges that came with the disease, like I said, that there was some depression sprinkled in there, and my knee was swollen to the size of a cantaloupe. So that kind of put a halt to the things that I love to do, right? Like I love to hike, I love to camp, I love to kayak. Like I'm decently active. I was decently active, I should say. And that really stopped it. So when you stop that and you add that little depression in, that was very, very challenging. I think something else that was challenging for me is that, like, I was used to also saying yes to everything, saying, yes, I can do this. Yes, I can do that. And to say no, that was hard to figure out, even though I was in pain, but I still wanted to do these things. You know what I mean? Um, and there's the challenge of something else that was really challenging for me was, do I take medication? Do I take the medication, or do I try to do this holistically?
Out of the lifestyle changes and that you've had to make, what are some of the most important habits that you've adopted to help you manage your autoimmune disease?
I think some of the most helpful things that I've done, habits that I've created, would probably be, and like I said, I'm not perfect at any of these, and I don't know that I ever will be. Diet was probably the most helpful with managing my autoimmune disease. There's a lot of other habits that I've kind of taken on, such as, breath work and meditation and sleep routine. Sleep is actually probably a big one too. But diet's been the biggest one. That was kind of a game changer for me, because that really allowed me to see what was triggering some of my autoimmune flares. Um, I wish I could say that I was perfect at the diet and that these flares didn't happen anymore, but sometimes I'm human and sometimes I can't control the pathways in my brain that are telling me that I should eat a piece of pizza. So, but diet was huge. Once I figured out um what was causing the flares, to be able to like strengthen the pathways to say no to those things, has kind of helped diminish some of the flares. So.
No, that makes sense to me. Diet is usually important. And have you been able to avoid medication or have you chosen to take it?
Oh man, I went 3 years without taking the medication in the first 3 years. And it was and I worked with a naturopath during that time, and I was working on my diet. I was working on all of the things, and the inflammation just wasn't getting under control. Um, so at about the 3 year mark is when I remember I told myself, if on my birthday, which it was July 1st, I was like, on my birthday, if I still don't have this taken care of, like I got to start the medication. Um, and and that was from the advice of my naturopath. She had said, sometimes, Laura, that your inflammation can be so out of control that you need medication in order to get the inflammation under control. So things like diet and mindset, and movement can actually do their job, right? And
Yeah.
so I did start taking medication, and I'm on methotrexate. I actually started on Plaquenil. Actually, no, let me reverse a little bit more. I actually started on LDN, and LDN did not work for me. I know that some people, LDN, by the way, is low dose naltrexone. Um, and it has worked for some people. It did not work for me. And then I went to Plaquenil. And then what has worked for me is methotrexate. And I started out on a really, really low dose, lower than what my rheumatologist wanted me to. But I had also heard of other people that got really sick from it and got rashes and all these things. And intuitively, I don't know if this is right or wrong. I am not I am not a pharmacist. I'm not a nutritionist, but this is just what intuitively I wanted to do. And luckily my rheumatologist let me do it. Um, is I started out only taking 4 pills a day. And then now I'm up to 6 pills a day and he wants me on 8 pills a day. Right. But I wanted to start really, really slow and have it progress at a slow pace. So that way my body had time to adjust to the medication. And I haven't had any really bad side effects. I mean, the day after I might feel a little bit, sluggish and that kind of stuff. But other than that, I don't have any problems with it. And I'm very grateful for it too. I'm very grateful that that is an option for me.
So it's a great point to make here. Is like, yeah, you do as much as you can naturally, but
Yeah.
to have your naturopathic doctor say, okay, at some point the medication can be helpful, that's okay. And it's helping you. It's helping you to improve your quality of life. And, it sounds like, and also listening to you, you've learned how to listen to your body. And it's been my experience in working with other women that have autoimmune disorders and myself too, is that is key because especially when it comes, let's just say, for example, to movement, is that we have a threshold and it's not necessarily good to push beyond the threshold, which I'm sure you have found because I know it sounds like, well, you're in Colorado, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And you mentioned you like to move outdoors, but which is great. Nature is good, but you've, kind of talk a little bit about finding your balance with exercise and everything as well.
Yeah. No, and I know my limits too with hiking. Like I would love to say that I go for 8 mile hikes, but I can't. I know my limit is about 5 miles is when my feet start pooping out. So I don't go past that as of now, but I think intuitively, if I just listen to my body, um, I'll get there. That's my dream and my hope anyway, is that I'll get to my 8, 9 mile hikes.
Are there any resources such as books or websites or support groups that have been especially helpful to you in understanding and coping with your disease?
Oh my gosh, yes, yes, there are. I've got a couple books that were game changers for me. And because I struggle with habits and creating habits and things like that, the Miracle Morning was a big game changer for me, and that is by Hal Elrod. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And then another one that was really good was Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker. And that one is actually about alcohol. And I wouldn't say I have a problem with alcohol as much as so I'm single, right? Like I'm single. And usually when you go out on dates and you have drinks and things like that, and or just in social environments. And it was something that I didn't want to necessarily let go of. And you read this book, and when you get done reading this book, you're like, whoa. And so it kind of puts things into perspective. So I know that that's another resource. unboundwellness.com. She has great AIP recipes, and she's got some really good stuff there. And then also Eileen Laird makes a book, and that one is called, oh boy, The Healing Mindset. And that's a great book too.
Wow. Thank you. Definitely going to have to check all those out. That was great information. And yeah, recently I just actually was sharing with you earlier, I have started the autoimmune protocol diet. And they, so diet is key, and they have a meal service. I think it's paleo on the go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
no, I've actually had some of their foods. They've got some good stuff.
great. But I haven't tried it yet. So that's good to know. So what advice or insights would you share with someone who has recently been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease based on your own experience and journey?
I've got a couple of things. So one, it's okay to take the medication. I think that there's a lot of people that fear the medication and whatnot. And I know that I already kind of touched base on this a little bit, but it's okay to take the medication. Like, don't have any guilt, any shame around it. You're not failing if you have to do that. I think it's totally fine to attempt the holistic way without taking the medication, but know that I can't speak for any other disease besides my own, but rheumatoid arthritis, you absolutely can have permanent damage. And I think that I've got to a place where I'm like, it's about quality, not quantity. And I want to live my life. Like, if I'm not taking medication and I'm in pain, what kind of life is that? Right? Like, I want to be able to thrive in the time that I'm here. So that's a big one. Another key point to touch base on for a big piece of advice is there is no one size fits all diet for everyone. What works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for another. Even the AIP diet, when I did that, I was doing it and was still flaring. And here, come to find out, I was flaring because of the pork and the red meat. And that's allowed on the AIP diet. So I think if I were to give advice in that area, in the diet area, is just journal everything that you're eating, and then slowly but surely kind of connect the dots. Give yourself some grace. That's another big one, is just saying, you've never done this before. You've never had this autoimmune disease before. And you're going to fail. You're going to try again. You're going to fail. Like, just make sure that you're giving yourself some grace for the times that you need to sleep. Give yourself some grace for the times that you don't do great on your diet. Give yourself some grace, when you need some extra sleep, whatever that looks like. Just make sure that you're being very, very kind to yourself. And probably last but not least, make sure that you laugh about it and find the humor in it. Because if we don't laugh, we cry. So just make sure that you're able to not take it all too seriously. It's really easy to get so, intense into this journey, that we're just digging deeper and trying to figure everything out. Like, have fun and laugh. And I think that alone helps regulate our nervous system, so it's not so chaotic and crazy.
Yeah, that was well said. I mean, you just touched on pretty much everything in a lot of my questions. I mean, mindset right there. That's key. Having such a good outlook that you can laugh. And that's how I found you. I mean, you're giving humor, we're bringing joy. You're able to laugh at the journey and going through the process, right? Because we're all going to have challenges that come our way. But by sharing that, I mean, you also are empowering other people. So that's really, really important. And, you touched base definitely on nutrition and how it is individualized. And I think that is really important to make note of, that, we have, like, for example, the AIP protocol, which is, for those of you that don't know, an autoimmune specific diet. But even within that diet, we have to be careful because it's individualized. So it's not a one size fits all. So that totally makes sense as well. And you've touched a base about using meditation as a practice, a strategy as well for mental strategy to help, with emotional regulation. Am I missing anything?
I think something that we didn't really talk about is the power of sleep and how important that is in the journey. I sleep, I go to bed on average, right? Again, I'm not perfect. I always say that because there's times that, yes, I will be up till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. But for the most part, I go to bed at like 9:30 and I'm up at 5:30. But I also nap every single day. I take a nap. Um, and I think that sometimes we can just be so into like, and I'm also speaking from a perspective that I'm feeling pretty good, right? Like somebody might be listening and they're like, no, I can't even move. But knowing that like sleep is gonna need to come number one, right? Like it's so important. That's when our body is like healing itself and truly taking care of itself. So I think sleep is something that is super important.
Did it take you a little bit of time to get into a sleep routine?
No, not really. Not once I read that book, the Miracle Morning. That is what truly inspired me to put my phone in the middle. I put it out in the hallway, right? I turn the volume all the way up so that way when my alarm goes off, then I get up and get out, and so I don't have my phone in my room with me. But no, it did not take me a long time to do that. I know some people really struggle with that, but I think if you get your phone out of the room, that's very helpful. There's also other things that you can do to really coax your brain into sleeping, which is make sure that you have the blackout blinds, have some form of sound machine or an eye mask. Don't look at your phone a couple hours or the TV a couple hours before you go to bed. Remove any lights from your room. Have some magnesium. Like the list really does go on ways that we can kind of just woo our bodies into being tired and sleepy. Um, and I mean, I'm very fortunate in the fact that I'm not having like tremendous pain there. I mean, there was a time that I was where I couldn't sleep because of the pain that I was in. But I sleep pretty well throughout the night. Um, I could sleep all day. Really, I could.
Thank you so much for bringing up sleep. Yes, that
Yeah.
is, I mean, right there is so important. And we often don't even, want to bring that into the picture where that's where our body does recover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just as important as anything else. And like you said, it can be also individualized where like you're at a point where you have a set time you go to bed and you get up, but you need to take a rest. And some people may not need the rest. Some people may need more rest, some people, at different times. So just like you said, honoring where your body is at, I think is key as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this has been great. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap it up?
One thing that I want to remind, everybody about is that we've never done this before. Like we've never had an autoimmune disease, or maybe you got diagnosed with a new autoimmune disease and it brought on a whole slew of new things, right? And something else that's kind of stinky is that our journeys are constantly changing. Like maybe you're okay with the food for a little while and then all of a sudden you're not okay. Like we've never done this journey before. So just giving yourself some grace and knowing that it's going to take time to change habits and or change your lifestyle around or solidify these habits that we're trying to create. So make sure you give yourself some grace.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all the information you did with our audience about your personal journey and insights. And if you want to learn more about Lora Marie, you can follow her on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Exploring Autoimmune. And the links for all of her sites will be included in the description of this episode. Remember, we do episodes every week on Wednesday, and I look forward to having you join me then.